The Time of the Ghost, Chapter 5. This was another thing Sally had forgotten, it seemed, these almost nightly visits of the boys. She watched Imogen stumbling over her trouser legs to draw the curtains, even though it was not dark yet. Nobody switched on the light until the windows were covered, because the boys were here quite illegally. Will and Ned both had a slightly guilty look and kept grinning at one another like conspirators, while Cart stirred mugs of coffee and Fenella with great dignity crawled out from under the table. Everyone settled around the table with their mugs. Now Sally knew who did the pictures signed WH and N. The spaceships were Howard's, of course, and it was no wonder Ned Jenkins had done his surprisingly good bad drawing of Oliver. He really liked him. Oliver was rolling amiably and hugely from person to person, joining in the sociability, but he kept returning to Ned. Ned rubbed his back energetically each time as if he was scrubbing a hearthrug and chuckled. "That dog is so ridiculously huge I have to laugh every time I look at him," he said. "I know. Something went wrong with his genes and he turned out nearly twice as big as he should be," Cart said. "He ought to have been an Irish wolfhound, really." "You've told him that before," said Fenella. "Why is Filbert mad?" "He thinks he's got 2 heads," said Will Howard. Everybody looked incredulous, even Imogen, who did not care for coffee much, and was not being very interested in anything. "Really," Howard assured them. "Stinker started it yesterday. Nutty," he said with an absolute straight face. "Nutty, we think you may not have noticed your other head. We thought we ought to tell you because you forgot to comb its hair. It looks a sight." And Nutty says, "What do you mean I haven't got another head?" "Oh, yes, you have," says Stinker. "You mean you've gone all these years and not noticed?" And Nutty said, all puzzled, "If I'd got 2 heads, I'd have seen them in the mirror, wouldn't I?" "Oh, no," says Stinker. "The one behind's behind the one in front, you see." And Nutty, being Nutty, believes him. Ever since then, he's been turning around suddenly about once a minute trying to catch a glimpse of his other head before it dodges out of sight. Honestly, I swear it. "Boys are all mad," said Fenella. "Ah," said Howard. "Is that so? Girls only do sane things like lying on the tables eating paper, don't they?" There was a silence, while Fenella turned her most phenomenal glower on him. Out of it, Imogen said violently, "I think that's a very cruel and barbarous story." The silence deepened uncomfortably. Imogen would not look at anyone. She sat leaning forward stiffly in her chair with her head bent at an odd listening angle, staring into her mug of coffee. Sally found herself saying, "Imogen really is terribly unhappy." Imogen's face, with its strong angel features, was somehow bloated from behind. With tears she was waiting to cry. The boys could see it too. They could not understand it and it embarrassed them. Sally wondered, "Is that how Imogen would look if she knew I was dead?" "Fiddle-de-dee, Imo," Howard said, forcing the natural expression of cheerfulness back to his face. "I'll tell him tomorrow it was only a joke." Imogen did not answer. She just sat, leaning and bloated. "I promise," Howard said. When Imogen still would not answer or even look at him, he leant back with an artificial sigh of pleasure and gazed around the kitchen. "Ah, I do like a taste of home life." Though that sounded sarcastic just at the moment, Sally knew Howard meant it. He was trying in the only way he could think of to remind Imogen he was grateful to her. Imogen had started the visits of the boys. One day 2 years ago now, Sally thought it was. Imogen had discovered a homesick new boy crying in the hedge between the school garden and the orchard. It was Howard, of all people. Though he was a year older than she was, he had inspired Imogen to mother him. She had brought him into the kitchen and fed him cups of tea mixed with condensed milk stolen from Mrs. Gill's cupboard until Howard felt better. Howard came back the next day and the next, and when he made friends, he brought his friends. They'd worn a well-beaten secret path down the middle of the orchard hedge. The latch of the door clicked again and everything changed except Imogen's misery. Julian Addiman strode in laughing and dumped a bag of buns on the table. "2 nicked, 1 sponge, and 3 paid for," he said. "How's that?" "Brilliant," said Cart. "Out of character. What made you pay for 3?" said Howard. "I only promised him the money," Julian said. "Then I let you off," said Howard. "Hey, they're jam donuts, my favourite." "Perry's house have donuts every Tuesday," said Julian. "Why do you think I went there? You can trust your Uncle Julian, you know. He thinks of everything." "Keep the bag away from Oliver," Cart shouted, banging up from her chair to turn the kettle on again. Oliver's blurred nose was sweeping in over Ned's shoulder to work its magnetizing trick on a donut or so. Julian and Fenella plunged on the bag, both laughing, and shoved it out of reach. but Ned seemed to have worked Oliver's magnetising trick for him. Sally saw him pass Oliver a jammy lump over his shoulder, smiling secretively. What an odd boy Ned Jenkins was. You would never catch Julian Addyman being secretive, nor making faces and jerking an arm like Ned had been doing in the garden. Sally had forgotten Julian Addyman completely until now. She wondered how she could. He was dark and striking looking, with brows as black as Fenella's and eyes as nearly as blue and luminous as Imogen's, and he had a wide, curiously red mouth, which looked as if it was laughing all the time. Julian Addyman laughed a lot, but what people noticed most about him was that wherever he was, he took control. He was not bossy, nor was it the fact he was a fifth former and older even than Cart. It was just that when Julian Addyman was there, things ran Julian Addyman's way. He took control now in the easiest possible way. Ned moved his seat. Oliver was pushed out of the way, and Julian Addyman sat down with a mug of coffee next to Cart and facing Fenella. He looked at Fenella and laughed. There was nothing particular to it, but Sally found herself staring at Julian Addyman and feeling very strange. Everything seemed to quiver when she looked at him, as if she was about to be swept away by panic again. It seemed almost as if she was terrified of Julian Addyman. "Fenella," said Julian, "do my eyes deceive me, or have you tied your hair in 2 granny knots, one over each eye?" "I've been dying to ask that too," said Howard, "but I wasn't sure it was polite." Fenella sat up haughtily. "It keeps the hair out of my eyes, but if you must know, it's part of the plan." "Nature's holy plan," asked Howard, "or something else?" "A plan we devised to shake our parents up a bit," Cart explained. "We wanted to prove to them, and to Sally too, actually, that they wouldn't notice if something awful happened to one of us. If one of us died," Imogen said savagely without looking up. "I'm going to time how long it takes them to notice my knots," Fenella explained. "If they haven't noticed by Christmas, I shall fall seriously ill instead." "How are you going to do that? Drink poison?" Julian Addyman asked, laughing. Fenella sat up even haughtier. "I don't need to do anything so crude," she said, lifting her chin. "I shall just lie in bed and groan and think pale." "Pretend to be ill then, you mean?" Ned suggested. Fenella was genuinely scandalised. "It's not pretending. When I'm ill, Mrs. Gill has to bring me dinner, and she scolds me for being ill when she's so busy. She says it's only psychological. That means in your mind. And if I think pale, that's in my mind like a real illness, isn't it?" "I still call that pretending," said Ned. Howard was looking unhappy. "You don't know," he said, "how lucky you are to have so much independence. I wish I had." "It's all right for you," Imogen said fiercely. "You just come along in the evenings and enjoy yourself. You don't have to live with it." Julian Addyman was finding this boring. Sally could see him shifting about. Even though she was avoiding looking at him, she did not like the feeling he gave her. "Oh, come on," he said impatiently. "When are we going to start the séance?" "Séance?" said Sally, and at that the whole room, the electric light, the faces, the furniture, and the bulk of Oliver asleep by Ned's feet began to shake and quiver apart for Sally. "This is wrong," she said. "There's been an accident." Everything she could see was falling into upright waving strands, as if she was looking through a bead curtain. Voices were filmy threads in a different dimension. Something very terrifying and grey and formless was appearing in the space behind the threads. Sally was so much afraid of the formless thing that she clung with all her might to the waving, stranding, fraying kitchen. She heard Ned and Howard in distant voices like filaments, protesting that spiritualism was a load of crap, and Julian Addyman replying in another strand of sound, "I thought that's what we came for." "No, it wasn't. It was something else I came for," Sally said, and she clung again to the threads as they threatened to billow apart and leave her with the formless thing. Cart, she noticed, evidently knew all about the proposed séance. She bounced up. Cart was so clumsy that 2 chairs spun about as she went, twirling from thread to thread as they moved, and she fetched a set of Scrabble letters which she dumped on the table with a thick glass tumbler. Howard's otter face, swaying like waterweed, examined the letters nervously. Ned and Fenella began picking out an alphabet from them, and Cart wavered across half the threads like a blue bolster to put the alphabet in a ring in the middle of the table. The thread of Julian Addyman's voice said something. Cart turned and smiled at him. Sally saw with what seemed to be a sense of enormous relief that Cart was keen on Julian Addyman. A formless face like Cart's, swaying and billowing from thread to thread, ought to have had no shape at all just then, yet because of the way she felt about Julian Adiman, Cart's face showed more firm and angelic than Imogen's, whose face was destroyed by misery. But Julian Adiman had been pointing out something wrong. The table was sticky. Cart moved all the letters and bent over a blue bolster again, rubbing the table hard with a cloth. Julian Adiman's hand swung casually out and came down on the bolster's rear. Smack! Sally jolted. The threads drew firmly back into place, and the kitchen with everything in it was solid again. There was an uncomfortable silence in it. Everyone was sitting and standing like a tableau, except for Oliver, who was heaving himself to his feet and looking inquiringly at Cart's too pink face. Imogen scraped back her chair and stood up. "Are you quite settled on this stupid séance?" she asked, and nobody answered. They were trying to move their attention from Cart and Julian to Imogen. "Very well," said Imogen. She was speaking in a hard, hacking gabble, by which Sally knew she was very angry. "I'm not doing it. I think it's stupid, mean-minded and vicious. It's playing with something nobody understands. It's immoral." "It doesn't do any harm," Julian Adiman exclaimed. "It's only for fun." "You've no business doing a thing like that for fun," Imogen snapped. "So you're not doing it," said Julian. "No," said Imogen. She took up her mauve beads in a trembling hand and bit them. "Nobody must do it." Julian Adiman gave Cart an exasperated look. Cart said wearily, "Imogen's always been like this. The first words she ever spoke were," Cart put on a squeaky, jeering voice, "I'm not playing." Sally found herself swooping towards the table. "Cart, that was thoroughly unkind. How dare you hurt Imogen just to please Julian Adiman?" Of course, no one heard her except Oliver, and he growled. "Look, if we get a ghost," Ned said diplomatically, "and it spells something out, we're going to need someone to write it down. Couldn't Imogen do that?" "Yes, Imogen," Cart said unkindly. "Do that or go away." Imogen bit her beads, not knowing what to do. Julian Adiman laughed. "She'd better go. The presence of an unbeliever could be fatal." "I'll stay and write it down," Imogen said defiantly, which was what Julian Adiman had intended her to do. Sally could see it in his face. "I can't think how I ever liked you," she said to Julian, and Oliver growled again. "Calm down," Ned said to Oliver. "What do we do, Julian?" "Everyone sits round and puts one finger on this glass," Cart said briskly. "After a bit it should start to move. Then we ask it things and it spells out the answers." "I don't think," said Howard, "I'm another unbeliever in your midst. Shouldn't we turn out the light?" "Stupid. How do we see the letters?" asked Fenella. Sally hovered over the table above the bent tops of 5 heads and 5 arms stretching star-shaped out to rest a finger on the glass. This was decidedly where she did some haunting. The first thing she would do was to give Cart a piece of her mind, she thought, looking at Imogen sitting bowed over a pad just beyond the table. Slowly, a little fearfully, Sally descended towards the fingers and the glass. "What happens if your parents come in?" Julian Adiman laughed. Everyone's arms at once went tense. Even if Sally had had the strength to move the glass against their 5 stiff arms, she could not have gone near it. Their nervousness crackled in a field of life around their fingers. It was like an electric shock. Sally bounced up from it with a yelp. The rumbling of Oliver vibrated the letters on the table. "They never do come in," said Imogen beyond the circle. "Nonsense," said Sally. "Of course they do. It would serve you all right if they came this very moment." "Cool it, everyone," said Cart. Her face was still firm and glowing with her feelings about Julian Adiman. "Nothing's going to happen unless we all relax. Sit quiet. Somebody tell a silly story or say something interesting." "The Ghost of Marmalade," Ned Jenkins said suddenly. "There was a rhyme when I was a kid. See, I think it went, 'I am the ghost of Abel Mabel. This parrot cage goes on the table.' But I didn't know what it was about, so I thought it said the Ghost of Marmalade." This caused a mystified silence. Sally nervously descended. The glass in the middle of the fingers was quite bearable to touch now. She gave it an experimental shove. Her hand, or what seemed to be her hand, went down inside it in the midst of 5 sizzling living fingers. It was like being inside a gas ring, but this gas ring was fixed in place by 5 stiff arms and would not move. "Just what does that mean?" Howard said to Jenkins. "Well, I was thinking of the sticky table," Ned said apologetically. "Were you indeed?" said Howard. "Now I'll tell you something really interesting. You know, don't you, that I'm the proud possessor of a metal detector? Well, usually I use it to go round picnic places on the downs, and you'll be surprised how much money people lose there. Now, today at lunchtime, Greer borrows my metal detector just for kicks, and goes pottering off with it along the trees across the playing field, and the thing shouts at him. There was obviously a whole heap of metal hidden in the ground there." Sally felt the glass sliding gently away with her. "Help! There's a ghost!" she exclaimed, and nearly snatched herself away from it. Then she realised the muscles were slyly flexing in the longest arm. Julian Adamant's finger was fizzing just a little harder than the others, and that finger was bearing the glass softly sideways. "No, you don't," said Sally, and pulled against the finger. Between them, she and Julian brought the glass to a trembling standstill. The smile which had been curling at Julian Adamant's red mouth faded to a look of surprise. "It's moving," Ned whispered. "Take no notice," Fenella said reprovingly. "You were saying, Will?" Howard's eyes were very round and fixed on the glass, but he went on. "Well, Greer knew he'd found something big, but being a prat, he doesn't dig it up himself or even tell me. No, he reports it to himself, and himself streams off there this evening with all of us and tells us we may have found a hoard of Roman coins." "I see how to do it," said Sally. "You have to brace yourself against the fingers. The fizzing thing round them is quite good for pushing at. Here goes." She heaved the glass over in the direction of C, meaning to begin on Cart. "And was it a Roman hoard?" Cart asked breathlessly as the glass stirred. "No," Howard said distractedly, mesmerised by the glass. "I mean, I don't know. Himself forgot to bring anything to dig with." "It's definitely moving," said Ned. It was. Sally was exerting all the force she had, and still the glass only crept. "Here's where we ask," said Julian Adamant. His eyes were glowing with excitement, very blue and so luminous that they looked odd. He said very loudly and precisely, "Is there anybody there? Move to Y for yes if there is." "An N for no if there isn't," murmured Ned. "If you insist," said Sally. She looked over her non-existent shoulder and found the Y. It took a mighty heave. The 5 arms were not ready to give way at all. Then they did, and the glass slid in a rush. "Z," said Julian Adamant. "Got that, Imogen? I think we take it that means yes. Put Y query. This really is working, isn't it?" He spoke loudly and precisely again. "Would you spell your name, please?" "If you say so," said Sally. "I wish I knew the alphabet better." She stared around in search of the S. "It's stopped," said Fenella, bitterly disappointed. "Shh!" said the others. The S was not far from the Z, of course. Sally dragged the glass around there. "S," said Julian Adamant. "Next letter, please," he added loudly. "All right," snapped Sally. "I'm doing my best. This is hard work." Heave on the fizzing fingers and heave. They have the idea now. The arms were yielding more easily. She heaved towards the other end of the alphabet and stopped. "How do I spell my name, anyway?" "A vowel next. There's one." "E," said Julian Adamant. "Next letter, please." The next part was no one's fault exactly. It was simply that excitement seized them all, Sally included. She was really communicating. It was the best thing that had happened all day. When she pushed the glass, the arms yielded swiftly and readily, too readily. She had been aiming for the L. "Never mind, there's 2 L's in Sally. Bother, missed again. They're letting it go too hard. Ah, got it. Now I know the rest. There. Exhausted, Sally pulled away from the ring of fingers and hovered towards the ceiling. Wow, that was hard work. The 5 around the table took their fingers off the glass and rubbed aching elbows, almost equally exhausted. "Imogen, can you read that back?" Julian Adamant said, puzzled. Imogen's voice shook. "Semolina, she said. Then she gave a squawk of laughter and covered her face with the pad. "It's a ghost called Puddin'," said Fenella. "Ask them to spell it again," Ned said urgently. Yes, do, Howard said, catching the urgency. Sally could actually feel the surge of worry coming from them both. It piled upward out of them like smoke from a bonfire. Why? Said Cart. Oh, we might as well, but it seems to have gone dead. She shoved the glass with her finger and nearly toppled it over. See if it'll come back again, said Ned. Howard and I will, if you don't want to. Ned Jenkins and Will Howard looked at one another. Both of them put their fingers back on the glass. What's the fuss? Said Julian Adderman. We've got a ghost with a strange sense of humour, that's all. Cart and Fenella put their fingers on the glass again. Julian Adderman sighed and did the same, with a flourish. There, he said, then loudly, spell your name again, please. Oh, very well, said Sally. You're trying to bore me, aren't you? But it's the only way I've got to talk to you, so I'll have to do it. She descended once more and pushed her non-fist into the gentle heat of the gas ring of fingers. Ah, said Julian Adderman, and his eyes glared laughing excitement. Ned and Will, however, were entirely serious. Their eyes flickered nervously to each letter in the circle as the glass trundled off towards it. This time it was easier. Sally was getting to know where the letters were. The others were ready for the movement of the glass when it came, and there was less excitement to interfere with. With very little trouble, Sally spelled out S-A-L-L-Y. I thought so, said Ned, and Cart burst out, It can't be. It must be some other Sally. Everyone in Schoolhouse calls your Sally Semolina, said Howard, because of her being Selina. I tell you it can't be, Cart said vehemently. Our Sally's all right. She's just gone to stay with Audrey Chambers, just up the hill. This was news to Sally. She stared at Cart to see if she was telling the truth. She seemed to be. Cart was a bad liar. Then she stared at Fenella as Fenella said, But don't tell anyone. That's the other part of the plan. Fenella was a good liar. There was no way to tell if this was the truth or not. Sally turned to Imogen as Imogen added, Well, we hope our parents will think she's dead or kidnapped, if they notice at all, that is. Imogen was a rotten liar. This was obviously the truth. Then what's going on then? Sally cried out. Come on, said Ned, before it goes away again. He spoke clearly to the air in front of him. Prove to us that you're Sally Melford. By saying something we know only you could know, Howard added. Sally could think of one thing, only one. It seemed a pity it was going to embarrass Howard, but she had to make them sure. She heaved on the fizzing space between the fingers again. Where's the H down that side? The glass travelled easily to H, O, to W, but after that Sally lost her way again. She stopped beside the W, looking at everyone's intent faces, wondering where she was supposed to be taking the glass next, and nobody spoke. Somebody breathed heavily. Beyond Cart and Ned, Imogen sat bowed towards the pad of paper, pencil ready, still with that odd listening look. Again Sally was struck with how miserable Imogen was. She was supposed to be talking about Howard and Imogen. Of course, where was the I now? I-M-O, everyone murmured as the glass slid. Sally was rather put off her stride by it. When people spell a thing out as you write it, you feel you have to hurry to provide them with the next letter. Hurry, thought Sally. What comes after Imo? Obvious, really. G-R-I-V-I-E-N-G. Grieving, everyone murmured. Sally paused, rather pleased. She had remembered to put the E in grieving. It was so easy to get lost between letters. That doesn't prove much, Howard murmured to Ned. They both seemed disappointed but oddly relieved at the same time. That reminded her. Oh, this is bothersome. She set the glass trundling again. W-L-L. There should have been an I in that, but too late now. H-O-M-S-J. Bother, missed. K-I-N-H-E-D-G-I-M-O-G. Oh, good gracious! Imogen shrieked, jumping up. It really is Sally! Sally hovered, resting from her labours, watching two round heavy tears roll against Imogen's cheeks. Howard's otter face glowed dark pink. Why is it Sally? Julian Adderman asked, leaning back and stretching. What's Homsjikin? Somewhere in Holland? Cart explained. Imogen found Will being homesick in the hedge, but Imogen... Julian Adderman looked round at Howard and chuckled, not kindly. Imogen clenched her hands and dug the air with her elbows for emphasis. I know it's Sally. She's reminding me about Will, and she's worrying about me. That's just Sally all over. She spoke to the air above Julian Adamant's head. It's all right, Sally. You mustn't worry about me. You must tell us what's the matter with you. Move up, Cart. I'm sure she'll find it easier to talk if I'm holding the glass too. And Imogen thrust Cart sideways to plunge one of her fingers down on the glass. Now, Sally, she said, tell me all about it. Sally was touched. Another tear was trickling down Imogen's face. All the same, she was a trifle annoyed. She had not meant to ask about Imogen, and she did wish everyone would not speak to her so loudly and slowly, as if ghosts were deaf or very stupid. It's not moving, said Ned. It was a mischievous ghost playing a trick, I expect, said Fenella. Shut up, Fenella, said Sally. Here we go again, then. Imogen's finger made the glass harder to push, not easier. Sally put her whole force into it, and she heaved. The trouble was, she thought as she heaved, she could not tell Imogen all about it because she did not know herself. It seemed easiest to ask a question. A.M., spelled Sally with great effort. M.J.N. Oh, no. Oh, I give up. D.E.A.D. She was thoroughly startled by the effect this had. Cartwell, Will, and Ned jumped up beside Imogen. At last 2 chairs fell over, and somebody must have trodden on Oliver too. He sprang up with a yelp. There was such a babble of worried talk that Sally went right up to the ceiling and hung there to avoid the noise. Imogen was shrieking, "Oh, what happened? What's happened?" And Ned was shouting, "I knew it was." Howard was saying, "Look here, this is serious. I think your practical joke has misfired somehow." And Cart was bellowing, "Shut up! Everyone! Keep calm! This is serious!" Julian Adamant scraped his chair and coughed for attention. "Look, if this nonsense really worries you, all you've got to do to disprove it is to telephone Sally's friend." "Stupid," said Fenella. "If Sally's dead, she can't talk on the phone." "I don't think this was Sally," said Julian. "Not for one moment. Come on, Cart, you go and phone and I'll come with you." "It was a ghost, though," Fenella called after Julian, as he and Cart hurried to the door. Julian Adamant held the door open for Cart and answered, as he followed her through, "Don't believe in them." "Well, what do you think I was then?" Sally yelled after him.